In one country, 16-year-olds walk into workshops and begin learning precision metalwork and get paid while they do it. In another, 18-year-olds sign promissory notes for amounts they can barely imagine before they've earned a single paycheck. Both systems call themselves preparation for adult life. The difference isn't just money, it's who carries the weight when preparation doesn't guarantee arrival. Germany didn't invent apprenticeship. Guilds trained craftsmen for centuries across Europe, long before anyone thought to call it education policy. But after 1945, when cities lay in rubble and factories stood idle, something shifted. The country needed to rebuild everything: infrastructure, industry, expertise. There were no shortcuts. You couldn't import a generation of skilled workers. You had to grow them. So companies and the state sat down together and made a strange bargain. Firms would open their facilities to teenagers. They would teach them real work, not theory, not simulations, but the actual rhythm of production. In exchange, the government would structure the system, fund the classroom portion, and ensure standards are held across industries. It wasn't charity, it was infrastructure. The apprentice spent 3 or 4 days a week inside a company, learning to operate machines, troubleshoot failures, and read the unwritten rules of a workplace. The other days were spent in vocational school, covering the theory behind the practice, 2 streams running parallel. Work and learning weren't separated by years or debt, they were woven together. And the apprentice got paid, not much, but enough. Enough to live like a young adult with dignity, not a dependent waiting for permission to start. The firms absorbed the cost of training, salaries, supervision, materials, mistakes. Some apprentices would leave after certification, others would stay and become the next generation of department heads. Either way, the company was investing in the labor pool it would eventually draw from. It made sense the way crop rotation makes sense. You don't harvest the same field forever. This wasn't presented as a backup plan. It wasn't framed as what you did if you weren't smart enough for university. In Germany, about half of young people go through apprenticeships. Engineers and electricians sit in the same societal tier. There's no asterisk next to one. The cultural signal mattered as much as the paycheck. A certified machinist wasn't a dropout. They were trained. The word had weight. Youth unemployment stayed low, not because of rhetoric, but because 18-year-olds entered the labor market with something employers actually wanted: proof they could do the work. At some point, the risk stopped being individual. If you trained someone and it didn't work out, you retrained them. The system absorbed failure as friction, not catastrophe. The downside didn't land on one person's credit report. Now let's turn to the West. America came out of the same war wealthier and untouched by bombs. It had different problems. Returning soldiers needed pathways. The economy needed expansion. The GI Bill opened universities to millions who never would have attended otherwise. Subsidized, accessible, transformative. College became the engine of the middle class. For a few decades, it worked. Public universities were cheap. States funded them as public goods. A semester's tuition could be paid with a summer job. Degrees signaled competence, opened doors, and delivered on their promises often enough to justify the faith. But something was shifting beneath the surface. As more people got degrees, employers began requiring them, not because the jobs had changed, but because they could. The degree became a filter, not a certificate of skill. Credential inflation crept in silently. What once opened doors now just keeps them closing in your face. Meanwhile, the cost started climbing. States cut funding, universities raised tuition. The gap widened every year. And instead of rethinking the model, America did what it often does with problems that involve both money and the future. It created a loan program. Federal student loans arrived as a solution. You could still go to college. The barrier wasn't removed, it was deferred. The bill wouldn't come due until later, until after graduation, until after you'd secured that good job everyone kept promising was waiting. The risk was transferred, quietly, completely. The state stopped funding education as a public investment and started financing it as a private one. The logic was clean. You benefit from your degree, so you should pay for it. Education became a product you purchased, not a commodity you entered. And if the product didn't deliver, if the job market shifted, if your field dried up, if the economy collapsed the year you graduated, you still owe. The loan didn't care whether the degree worked. It wasn't contingent on outcomes. You borrowed against a future that hadn't happened yet, and the contract held regardless. This wasn't a mistake, it was a design. In Germany, companies accepted the cost of training because they understood labor as something you cultivate. In America, individuals accepted the cost of degrees because education had been reframed as a personal asset, a way to invest in yourself. One country built a system to train workers, the other built a system to finance them. The consequences played out slowly, across decades, in ways that didn't make headlines but reshaped millions of lives. A German apprentice finishes training and enters the workforce with no debt. They can take risks, move cities, start a business, say no to bad employers. Their baseline is zero. An American graduate finishes college and enters the workforce carrying an average of $30,000, $40,000, or $50,000 in debt, sometimes more. The payments start 6 months after graduation, whether or not you found work in your field, whether or not your field still exists. Every financial decision bends around that number. You take the job that pays more, even if it's the wrong fit, because the loan doesn't care about fit. You delay buying a home, starting a family, and saving for emergencies. You stay in places you'd rather leave because moving costs money you're already spending on the past. Debt doesn't just limit choices, it alters the way you think about risk itself. Starting a business? Too dangerous. Switching careers? Can't afford the gap. Saying no to exploitation? Not with payments due. The loan becomes a background hum, a constant weight that turns every opportunity into a calculation. And if you can't pay, the debt doesn't vanish. It follows you throughout your entire life. Wages can be garnished, tax refunds seized. There's no bankruptcy exit for student loans. The system is designed to chase you. This is where the systems quietly separate. Germany retrain workers when industries shift. If your skill set becomes obsolete, the same infrastructure that trained you the first time can train you again. The cost is shared, the risk is distributed. America bills you either way. If your degree doesn't lead to employment, the debt remains. If your industry collapses, the debt remains. If you were 19 and didn't understand compound interest, the debt remains. You carry it alone. People say, just learn a trade, as if the option is sitting there, obvious and accessible. But America dismantled most of its vocational infrastructure decades ago. High schools gutted shop classes. Community colleges shifted towards transfer degrees. Apprenticeship programs exist, but they're fragmented, underfunded, and hard to find. You can't tell individuals to take a path you didn't build. Germany didn't just choose apprenticeships, it built the systems that make apprenticeships possible: industry coordination, government oversight, cultural respect, and employer investment, all of it interlocking. America didn't fail to do that. It chose differently. It chose to let education become a market, and markets don't build pathways for people who can't pay. By now, the scale is staggering. More than 40 million Americans carry student debt. The total hovers near $2 trillion. It's larger than credit card debt, larger than auto loans. Entire generations are navigating adulthood with this weight. Tuition keeps rising, wages don't. The math breaks a little more each year. Students borrow more to chase degrees that signal less in a job market that requires more experience than education ever provided. And the system doesn't bend. Politicians talk about reform, loan forgiveness, free college, interest rate caps. The proposals appear and stall and reappear in different forms. The structure holds. Because at some level, this isn't a bug. It's the model working as designed. If education is a private investment, then debt is the price of ambition. If you want to improve your station, you pay for it. The logic is airtight until you zoom out and notice who benefits. Lenders collect interest for decades. Universities raise prices without competition. Employers demand degrees but don't fund the training. The risk flows downward. The profit flows up. One country asks, how do we ensure our people can work? The other asks, how do we ensure our people can pay? Maybe you're watching this late at night, alone, with your own loans sitting in the back of your mind like a second mortgage on a future you're not sure you'll reach. Maybe you're watching from a country where university is free, or nearly free, and you're wondering why America organized itself this way. Maybe you borrowed money to study something you loved, and the love is still there, but so is the debt hovering over your mind, and you're tired of pretending they don't pull in opposite directions. This isn't about blame. It's about seeing the shape of the system clearly. If this explanation resonated, if it helped you see your own experience inside a larger structure, consider supporting channels like this one. Not because you owe us anything, but because this kind of work takes time, and it doesn't come with institutional backing. We're curious where you're watching from, too. Not for data, just because these systems play out differently depending on where you stand, and the comments often reveal things the script couldn't. But there's no urgency here, no countdown, just an invitation, if it fits. The American system didn't fail to educate people. It succeeded at something else entirely. It turned education into an asset class, a revenue stream, a financial product that generates returns long after the service ends. Colleges became businesses, loans became securities, students became borrowers. And once that transformation was complete, reform became almost impossible because too many institutions now depend on the debt continuing. Germany simply never asked learning to carry interest. It treated training as a cost of having an economy, the way you'd treat roads or water. You build it because the alternative is collapse. America treated it as a personal responsibility, a choice, an investment with your name on the paperwork. Both approaches create workers. Only one creates debt. The question was never whether people should be educated. It was always who pays and what happens when they can't. One system answered by spreading the cost. The other answered by spreading the risk. And risk, left alone, always finds the same people.